jurisdictions, not just across Europe but in other areas, is that body-worn cameras are extremely helpful in protecting Gardaí, in protecting people around them, and particularly where they are maybe the first on a scene where a crime has been committed. And time again, the Commissioner has used the example where a domestic violence incident has occurred, where the Gardaí are the first on scene, and sometimes those few minutes are absolutely crucial. It's in using that evidence that they can obviously bring about prosecutions, or that they can exonerate people as well. So it's not to say that these cameras will be rolling all the time. They won't. There won't be Gardaí walking down the street. So when will they be used?
Will a Garda need prior approval, for example, from a senior Garda to use them, to turn them on?
Not for body-worn cameras. So to differentiate between the body-worn cameras and then the facial recognition technology that we're talking about, if an incident were to occur, a member of the Guards would turn it on. It would reverse back maybe 10 or 15 seconds because obviously an act has happened, so you want to capture that, and then it would be turned on for the remainder of that incident. Now, it may or may not be needed, it may or may not be accessed afterwards, but you could imagine if they were just running constantly all the time, the amount of information, the amount of Gardaí we have, the amount of storage that would be needed, it's not practicable. So this is where there are specific incidents where it's needed, it would be turned on, it would be then turned off where it's not.
This is the body cameras you're talking about?
This is the body-worn cameras. When we come to facial recognition technology, what we've clearly said, and I've clearly said, is that there will be safeguards put in place as to how it's used. So it won't be used live. There won't be guards walking down Grafton Street live profiling
Surveilling
anybody.
People.
Absolutely not. That will be prohibited. It will be used on a retrospective basis. So where something has already happened, it will be very specific. So where you have life sentences for particular crimes, murder, rape, serious sexual assault, child sexual abuse, abduction, serious security matters. So where something has happened, you will have to get prior approval from a chief superintendent, somebody who's not involved in the case. We will make sure, and this is the legislation that we're bringing forward, that it is in line with international best practice. So already the European Data Protection Commission Board have outlined terms of reference and the way in which we can apply facial recognition technology in a safe and ethical way, and this will be done to those exact standards.
I want to stick with the body cameras because they are a significant change in policing here. Will a person be asked for their consent to be filmed?
No, they will not. Not in an instance where perhaps an attack has happened, where an assault has happened, where, again, to give the example, a member has been called to a house where somebody has claimed that there has been an incident of domestic violence. If the guard walks into the house and turns on the camera, then obviously there will be an ability to see what has happened, to survey the incident, and if something is said in the first few moments, which is often the case, then that will be used.
But if that victim of domestic violence or the victim of assault doesn't want to be filmed, they can't refuse.
Well, I think what we have to look at here is the overall picture and what is it that the guards are trying to achieve. So if a victim has made the phone call and asked for help, then the Gardaí have to use, I suppose, their own common sense here as well, and what they feel would be best for the situation. But you can imagine if you have an incident where somebody is attacking a guard and they say, turn that off, I don't want to be filmed.
Now I'm talking about victims here specifically.
Absolutely. And look, if a victim prefers that the camera is not on, then of course the guard will have to take that into account. It's not the case that for every single incident they will have to turn it on. But I think they will have to use their own intuition and look at the situation as a whole and what is the best for the people who are involved here. But again, there will be codes of conduct, there will be practices set out, and that will be clearly, that will be clear for people to see what are the codes of conduct here for the Gardaí. But, whether we look at body-worn cameras or whether it's facial recognition technology, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to give Gardaí the tools to deal with the most serious of cases. And if I could, maybe for the facial recognition, because we're getting into
I do want to come back to that, but yes, and it is a very important point, and I do want to come back to it, but I just want to finish with the body cameras for the moment. In terms of the footage that the body cameras will record, who can watch it? When can they watch it? How long will that data be stored for? And where will it be stored?
So there will be a back system, so to speak. So when we said yesterday that the Gardaí will now begin to procure for body-worn cameras, it's not just the cameras that the guards will wear, but it's the back system that will then take in and the information will be fed into. This will not just hold information from body-worn cameras, but we obviously have Garda CCTV footage, we have community CCTV, we have number plate recognition, we have, where Gardaí often issue a call out for information from dash cams, all of those. So we need a system that can hold all of this information. It can then, depending on the case at hand, be accessed by the relevant member from Garda Síochána. So if it was someone who was called out to a house, then they know that they need that footage from that particular time and that instance. There would be no need for someone to access it otherwise. In terms of facial recognition, what we're saying is it's only in the most serious of instances and cases, and it will only be allowed to be accessed, as I've said, where you have prior authorisation and for those specific areas.
I'm wondering, in relation to the body cameras, how the public can trust that their images will not end up on social media, put there by a member of An Garda Síochána, which unfortunately has happened in the past with tragic consequences.
Well, where it has happened, it shouldn't have happened. And I mean, I can't say that every single member of An Garda Síochána is going to conduct their business in the way that they should. The vast majority, if not 99.9%, do. So we have to trust and work with the Gardaí and make sure that they apply the rules as they are set out, as is set out in the legislation. And I have full confidence that the Gardaí will do that. I really do. I trust the Garda Commissioner. I trust the people that he works with to make sure that this is used for the purposes that it's set out for, and that is to keep people safe and to investigate serious crime and criminal offences.
Do you have a figure for the cost of all of this, the body cameras specifically? The equipment plus then the whole management of the data?
We don't have an overall cost at the moment. What will happen now is, though, the procurement will go out, and I mean, what we want to use is the most up-to-date technology. We can give examples of where things worked and haven't worked and look at it from 10 years ago. We're now talking about the most up-to-date technology, which will be the most efficient that it's ever been. And obviously there's a cost to it, but the overall final cost I don't have yet.
Okay, coming back to facial recognition technology and the politics of where we're at now. The Green Party had been saying for months, and indeed others as well, some within Fianna Fáil, that it needed separate legislation. You have finally agreed with that. Why the change?
To me, it really makes no difference whether it's separate legislation or whether it's part of the digital recording bill.
But it clearly makes a difference because you've decided that you're going to go with separate legislation.
Well, we've reached a compromise, let's put it that way. And I think when you're in government with different parties, it is often the case that you need to work through where there are difference of opinions, either to a process or the actual policy itself. You land on a conclusion and you work with it. And that's where we are now.
Was it that, or was it the vote in the European Parliament last week, which is banning all AI-backed cameras?
No. And I mean, look, there's a lot of things happening at a European level. The European Council has said very clearly that they believe facial recognition should be used and they don't put the same level of barriers in place as the Parliament have just voted on, and that will now go into a trilogue where it will actually be finalised. So the vote in the Parliament doesn't actually set the parameters. In saying that, obviously, whatever is decided on at a European level, we will make sure our legislation is in line. But what's most important here for me is that the Gardaí can now procure body-worn cameras, that we have heads of bill that will allow for facial recognition into the future. And can I just give maybe the examples, because, there's a lot of talk about the politics of it and the technology. What are we actually talking about here? So some of the examples that the Commissioner has given to me, there was one incident where we had a murder case. There was 40,000 hours of CCTV footage across 150 different devices. It took weeks to sift through that. So you can imagine individual Gardaí looking at a screen, mistakes can happen in that instance, and the length of time and the potential for somebody who is serious, who poses a serious threat to evade the law is real there. So this could be done in a matter of hours.
Okay.
Another area just where you potentially have a person that has had a computer confiscated. There's thousands of child sexual abuse images on it. You need to be able to identify which of those are old, which of those are new. Some of them might be days or hours long. By using facial recognition among other databases at Europol or Interpol, you can immediately eradicate where they're old images, but you could potentially identify someone that is still a victim. This is what we're talking about. We can
I just want to ask you very finally about the Offences Against the State Act, because it's in the news today. A report which you commissioned, they couldn't agree on the future of this special criminal court, so a minority of 2 want to abolish, the rest of the other 4 want a permanent court. Which one are you going to back?
So I am not accepting or rejecting any of the reports. There's a huge amount of information in it, and it needs to now be assessed. It needs to be sent to the Gardaí, the DPP, the courts and others, and I will come back with recommendations in due course. But if
you'll
I
be voting
could say,
to renew it next week in the Dáil.
We will, and for the very clear reason that I believe it has stood the test of time. I believe the Special Criminal Court has served us well. The Garda Commissioner has clearly said that there is a need for it, and I would ask any person in this day and age, would you or would a member of your family like to sit on a jury trial where perhaps a member of the IRA or a member of an organised crime gang is being tried for? And the simple answer is no. We need to make sure the protections are in place, and I and my party will certainly be supporting it, as we always have.
We will leave it there for now. Thank you so much for coming in, Helen McEntee, Justice Minister. 8:32, Brian's here with a news update.
Thank you, Audrey. A Canadian aircraft has detected underwater noises in the search area for a missing submersible off the coast of Newfoundland. 5